Let's get started. So, can everyone hear me okay? Let's just do a sound check first. Okay, perfect. Also, can you guys see my screen here? I'm just gonna draw on it, just make sure you guys can see it live and can see me drawing on it and all that kind of stuff. You see the lines appearing on it, the highlights and everything? Okay, perfect. That's good, that's good. All right, so today we're going to be talking about support and resistance. Yesterday we talked about candles and I gave you some basic information on candles. And today I'm going to be talking about support and resistance, and I'm going to be showing you how I use support and resistance together with candles to take some pretty awesome reversal trades and make some profits in Forex. And I look for a very specific setup when I trade, and I always look for the same setup. I always look for those indecision candles we talked about yesterday. If you were in yesterday's session, or if you watched the recording, I look for those indecision candles on top of support and resistance. But support and resistance, it's not as easy to place as just throwing an indicator on your chart, because that's not how I do support and resistance. So today, first I'm going to explain to you why support and resistance is important, and then I'm going to show you how I place support and resistance. So the support and resistance I do is not like Fibonacci or pivot points. It's not calculated by a formula. I use my eyes and my brain to figure out areas in which price struggles, and that's where I place my support and resistance, and I'm going to show you how to do that same thing today. I mean, Fibonacci and pivot points are used by a lot of traders, and they do have their place in Forex. They are usable. They are a usable form of analysis, and I'm not saying that Fibonacci and pivots aren't good. I'm just saying that they have a major problem. They're static. You're told where to place your Fibonacci and your pivot points by a formula. Forex is driven by buyers and sellers, and I don't really like anything that's too static in Forex. So using support and resistance that is identified by buyers and sellers, in my opinion, is more accurate. And that's why I place my own support and resistance by eye. I place my own support and resistance by identifying areas in which buyers and sellers struggle. And like I said, that's what I'm going to show you how to do today. So the question is why? Why not just use Fibonacci and pivots? Well, it's because the big boys are using support and resistance. Big boys use support and resistance, and the big boys are banks, institutions, hedge funds, those kind of places. They use support and resistance. They view their charts in the same way. And when you're trading, you want to follow what the banks and institutions are doing because they're the smart money. As long as you're trading with them on the same side as they are, more often than not, you're going to be making profit. Not always, but more often than not. So that's why I use support and resistance, because banks are using support and resistance, and I want to be trading with the banks. I want to do what they do because they know what they're doing, and they're usually on the right side of big moves in Forex. So support and resistance is... Wait, I'm going to change the slide here. Support and resistance is used to identify areas in which there are buyers and sellers. So, in other words, support is another word for buyers. Support means buyers. Buyers are grouped in areas of support. So if you look at this chart here, the support areas are the green areas here. I'll just cross them instead of highlight them because you can't see the highlight. Support areas are these green areas here. Now, these green areas are areas in which there are buyers grouped. And this is very important information for us to have when trading Forex. We know that there are buyers grouped down here, so we know as price approaches these areas, buyers are going to try into the market and they're going to try push price up. So support areas are areas where there are buyers grouped. So support is just another word for buyers. These green areas here are areas in which there are buyers. And as price pushes down into these areas, we know that buyers are going to be trying to enter the market and trying to turn price around. They're not always going to succeed, but sometimes they're going to succeed. So support, just remember that support equals buyers. And support areas are always below current price. So current price is here on this chart. Support is always below current price. Support is always here. Areas above current price, they're resistance. Now, resistance area is an area where there are sellers grouped. Sellers are grouped at resistance, and sellers, what do they want to do? They want to push price down. So as buyers approach an area of resistance, sellers try to enter the market and try to push price down. So these areas, they give us a lot of very important information about Forex, about price, about this chart. In fact, if you think about it, they're kind of like a crystal ball. They tell you, before price even reaches there, they tell you that price is possibly going to stall or turn around there. Just think about how valuable that information is. We know that when price pushes up to here, it's probably going to stall or turn around. It could push through. I'm not saying it's going to stall or turn around for sure, but it could push through. But we know that price is possibly going to stall or turn around. We know that there are sellers here that want to sell and they want to push price down. So we know as price approaches this area that price might turn around. And if it doesn't, we know that when price approaches the next resistance area, it might turn around. So that is very valuable information. And on the other side, on the short side, when sellers push down to this area, we know that there are buyers here. We know buyers are grouped here, and that they're going to want to push price up. They're going to want to enter the market. They want to buy, and they want to push price up. Again, extremely valuable information. Buyers want to push price up. Sellers want to push price down. And knowing where the buyers and sellers are grouped on your chart, it gives you a huge advantage, because you don't even have to trade my strategy for this to be useful. You could be trading any strategy, and just knowing areas in which price is possibly going to stall is just a huge advantage to you. But, and now this is the important part, when you're using support and resistance with what I taught you yesterday, indecision candles, that's when everything starts to come together. Because if you were here yesterday, if you watched the recording, you know that indecision forms in a trend, and you know that when indecision forms in that trend, it means that price is probably going to stall, probably going to turn around, or at least it's there's a struggle between buyers and sellers, and that price is possibly going to turn around. Now, when you put those two things together, when there's a trend, it runs into an area of resistance, and then you get indecision inside that area of resistance, you start seeing indecision, that tells you straight away it's very likely price is going to turn around in this area. And it's likely that I can jump into a reversal trade, a short trade, and make some pips. And when price approaches a support area and you start to see indecision forming, it means that price is possibly going to turn around, and you can enter a long trade and take a long reversal. So this information is very valuable to you as a trader. And when you use it together with indecision candles, you can kind of start to see already how you can use this to your advantage. Now, I just want to say one thing before we move on. Don't use this tonight. So I'm showing you how to play support and resistance tonight, and I showed you indecision yesterday. Don't immediately just go out and start taking trades based on this. There's a little more to it, and that's what we're going to discuss tomorrow. There's entries, because just because indecision forms on support resistance, it doesn't necessarily mean price is going to turn around there. There's still the matter of confirming whether price is going to turn around, whether a reversal is coming. We still need to confirm that, so we're 100% sure that it's actually going to reverse. Or you can never be 100%, but we're fairly sure price is going to reverse there. So don't go out and trade this tonight. This is just the second step. Tomorrow we're going to do the third step, and that's when it's all going to come together. But today, I'm going to show you how to place these support and resistance areas on your chart. I'm going to show you how to place them on any pair. So we're going to start with a GBP/USD 8-hour chart, and I'm going to be placing support and resistance on this chart. So, yeah, this is an 8-hour chart. Now, I know a lot of you guys don't have access to 8-hour charts, and that doesn't matter. I've been placing support and resistance on 4-hour charts, on daily charts for ages. You don't have to use the 8-hour chart. It's not vital that you use the 8-hour chart. I just use the 8-hour chart because it's kind of like a nice middle ground between the 4-hour and the daily, and I just kind of like it. But you're fine to place these on the daily, you're fine to place them on the 4-hour. Support and resistance you place on the 4-hour or on the daily or on the 8-hour is valid across all those time frames. I use the same support resistance on the 4-hour as I do on the daily charts, so that doesn't really make a difference. So feel free to place these on the 4-hour. You're going to use the exact same techniques that I'm showing you today. The exact same techniques I'm showing you today, you can use them to place on the 4-hour or the daily. It's the same thing. So don't be too worried that I'm placing them on the 8-hour. Okay, so the first thing you do when you're placing support and resistance, you start with a blank chart, switch to whatever time frame you're going to be placing them on. Like I said, I'm using the 8 hour, and I zoom out a bit. So I zoom out to about here, so I can see a fair bit of data on my chart. And the very first thing I do, need to bring this back up for a second to get my tools. The very first thing I do is I try to identify recent bounces, and I try to place a line there. So I'm looking at this bounce here, check that bounce out there, and that bounce there. They kind of line up almost, not perfectly, but these are areas of support resistance. They're not exact lines, they're areas. So they don't have to line up perfectly. And if you look over to the left here, it possibly lines up with that one. So let's throw a line up here, around about there. Seems okay. Oh, that just dropped a little lower. Around about there seems okay. So let's throw a line up there. And then we're going to look for another bounce. And wait, just see how see how those line up there? Those bounces? They don't have to be precise. They don't have to be exactly from the line. If it's a little bit below, a little bit above, a little bit below, that's cool because they're areas of support resistance. So keep that in mind. They don't have to line up perfectly. So I place a line up there, and let's look for the next one. Okay, I am thinking probably around about here. See this recent bounce here? Always try to look for the more recent bounces. Recent data is always the most important data. So try to look for the most recent bounces. See that bounce there? I'm going to place it based on that. And there's also a bounce here. See that? And there's a bounce here. See that? So we got 3 bounces from around about this area. 3 pretty strong bounces from around about this area. So yeah, we'll place that one. And these lines aren't for sure. We're going to have to confirm these soon. But I'm just going to throw them up here for now, and then we're going to take the charts back and confirm them. So, next one, perhaps around about here. It should be pretty obvious why I'm placing it here. I mean, you guys can see this bounce here. There's another bounce there. There's a bounce here. When price came down, there's a bounce there. So there's quite a few bounces from this one. It looks like a pretty strong area of support resistance. So we'll throw this one up. We'll take it back soon and we'll confirm it. Next one seems a little bit further away. I'm thinking around about here, perhaps. The reason I want to place it here is because we've got pretty strong bounce there. We've got a bounce here. We've got a wick bounce here. Now, wick bounces, they do count. When a wick bounces from an area, it does count. See, when price came down through here, it tried to break up through it, and we got like 2 small wick bounces here. And when this candle came through, it closed exactly here, and the new one opened, and it kind of struggled a tiny bit. So yeah, around about there looks pretty okay. Let's place the next one. Next one looks like should go perhaps around about here. Now I want to place it here because yeah, I already explained this applies to 4-hour charts as well. So if anyone's joined late, I'm doing this on the 8-hour, but this applies to 4-hour and to daily. All these techniques are the same across all timeframes, guys. So don't worry that I'm doing it on the 8-hour chart. So price comes down to here, bounces away. You got another bounce here, not exactly from the area, but like I said, it's an area of support resistance. It doesn't have to be a perfect bounce from it. As price broke up through here, came back down, and then see how it tries to struggle back to get through here. So it kind of forms along this area for a while before breaking through. Yeah, this isn't the strongest one, but it looks like the best one we can place around here. There's also a bounce here. I don't really mark that one. So yeah, this looks like a possible area of support resistance. I mean, we'll throw this one up for now, and we'll take it back and we'll confirm it. I think that's enough for now. Yeah, we could throw some lower here, but no, we'll leave this for now because I still want to go through a few more charts. I don't want to do just GBP/USD. I mean, I want to do Euro CAD. And the reason I want to show you guys some support resistance on Euro CAD is because I don't want to do just the big pairs that everyone trades. I want to do some smaller pairs too that not as many people trade, just to give you guys a bit of variety on how I play support resistance. So yeah, we'll just throw 5 up on this chart for now. Alright, so the next step after you throw these up, because these are kind of like possible support resistance areas, they're not confirmed, we need to drag the charts back and we need to confirm that this is an actual support resistance area. A handy little trick I use is I change the color of the line before I drag it back. Change it to something really obvious that kind of stands out. Now the reason I do this is, it doesn't really matter with this top line here, but when you get to these middle lines here, and then you start dragging your chart back, it's easy to lose track of which line you're working with. So if you highlight the line in a different color, the line you're working with, it's much easier to keep track. So we're going to look at this top line first. I'm just going to confirm that it is support resistance. Immediately as I pull it back, you see a pretty decent bounce here. So that tells me that there is support resistance here. Check that out. Another pretty strong bounce here. Bounce there. As price broke up through it here, it kind of came back here and it bounced from it. Price struggled through here. I'm actually going to zoom in now, just so it's a little easier to see closer. I'm going to zoom in a bit. Okay, so yeah, we can see some bounces there. Let's drag the chart back a little further. Okay, you can see a pretty strong bounce there, but then price came back down and broke through it. You can see price broke through it here, but then it came back up and it struggled to get through it, dropped back down, eventually it broke through. Just because price breaks through support resistance, it doesn't mean that it's not valid support resistance. Just because price breaks through it, it doesn't mean it's not valid. Price breaking through support resistance is pretty normal. It's just you want to see price struggle there quite often as it moves through it, and that's what we're seeing with this line. We're seeing price struggles there quite often. Now you got bounce there. Wait, let me mark that one for you guys. A bounce here. See, as price broke through here, it struggled on its way back up, and then eventually it broke through. And you can see a pretty direct bounce here. So this is enough for me to confirm that this is a support resistance area. And one other very important thing to remember, recent data is always most important. So recent data is always most important. With time, these support and resistance areas, they're liable to move 10 pips up, 20 pips up, 30 pips up, or 10, 20, 30 pips down. So the further you go back, you're going to notice the less accurate it gets. But if you go back about a year or 2 or 3, they should remain pretty accurate, pretty much in the same general area. And you should be able to confirm with that. But don't go back too far, because, like I said, they move with time, and they get less and less accurate the further back you go. Recent data is always the most important, and the recent data is pretty strong with this one. Recent data is pretty strong with this one. And the past data that we looked at the last year or so is also pretty strong. So that's enough for me to confirm this is a proper support resistance area. So I'm going to change the color back, and I'm just going to throw up some dotted lines around it just to mark it as a area of support resistance. There we go. So that's our first area of support resistance confirmed. Just unselect these lines. Then I'm going to switch this one to red. And we're going to drag this back. So the first bounce is there. We've seen that one. And we saw those ones there. So let's drag back a little further. Okay, there's some bounces here. Kind of a pretty strong wick bounce there. As price came down through here, you could see it stalled for one candle before pushing back through. As price came up here, you could see it stalled for 2 candles before pushing through. So it looks like price is stalling here. It looks pretty decent already, but we'll drag it back. We'll drag it back a little further. Someone's asking why I throw dotted lines around the support resistance areas. It's just really to identify it as an area. It just makes it clearer on the chart that it's an area. I don't like having just a line. You don't have to have the dots around it. And I don't place the dotted lines any specific distance away from the center line. I just throw them up roughly 10 pips to either side. The dotted lines aren't very important. They're just a visual aid, just to say, hey, this is a support resistance area. I just use them for that. You don't need them. They're not essential. It's just something I like to have on my chart. And there's no specific distance that they're placed away from the center line, like I said. It's just to identify it as a support resistance area. Okay, we can see when price came back down through here. See how price came back through here, and then it kind of struggled for quite some time before continuing to move down. So again, that identifies that this is possibly a support resistance area. We'll drag charts back a little further. And see what I mean by marking this line red? You can imagine if you've placed 10 lines on this chart and you're just dragging back and forth, it's easy to lose track of which line you're working with. So I change it to a different color. That way it stands out and it's easy to identify the lines that we're working with at the moment. Okay, so price came through here, bounced off this area, tried to get through this area and it bounced away. Price bounced from this area here, bounced here again from this area. So no, this is already showing me that this is a pretty decent area of support resistance. And I've got another bounce there. Kind of a minor bounce here. See how it bounced away before it broke through. So yeah, again, that's enough for me to confirm this is a support resistance area. This is the process. You just place them based on recent data. You make sure that they're actual support resistance areas by dragging your chart back a bit. So just gonna place these lines roughly 10 pips to either side. There we go. That's our second support and resistance area confirmed. I moved that. Okay. So now we'll confirm this one. This one is quite a strong one based on recent data. A lot of recent data confirming this is support resistance area, these bounces here. So let's see if the past data agrees with us. Already got a bounce there. I think we already saw that one though when we were zoomed out. We got a wick bounce here. Okay. Check out these bounces. These are quite convincing. Bounce there, wick bounce here, and also a wick bounce here. So yeah, those are pretty convincing signs that there's support resistance in this area. Drag it back a little further. That one's kind of bouncing from there. It's a little high, to be honest. It's not exactly bouncing from the area. It's close, but yeah, it's not enough to actually call it a bounce from that. You can see here when our price, let me get my drawing tools, and when price broke through, it tried to get back up, it struggled for a bit, and then it came through. Yeah, you can see pretty convincing bounce there, wick bounce there. Wait, I'll just draw these in just to be sure you guys see it. Wick bounce, price broke through, then tried to come back up and struggled there. Made another attempt at coming back up, struggled, eventually it broke through. So yeah, this is enough for me to place this one again as a support resistance area. We're just going to confirm it. Okay, next one is this one down here. We'll just go ahead and we'll confirm that this is an actual support resistance area. Okay, so you can see a bounce there, but I think we already saw that one when we were zoomed out. Pretty strong bounce here. This price came down, it struggled through here, broke down, tried to get back up, struggled, didn't make it. And then it tried to come back up, as we saw there, and it bounced away. So, yeah, that's pretty convincing so far, but we'll drag it back a little further. I usually go back a few months just to confirm these. You don't have to go back too far. Some of them, if you go back like 5-10 years, they're still going to be active support resistance areas, but you don't really need to go to that extreme. You don't need to go back that far. As you see, price broke down here, kind of struggled along here. Then it came down, tried to break back up through, bounced away. So yeah, that's convincing again. Ooh, those are nice. Pretty strong bounce. Another pretty strong bounce. Another pretty strong bounce. And it's a bounce off here too. So yeah, that's pretty convincing too. Ooh, check those two out. That's awesome. Now, if all the rest didn't confirm that this is a support resistance area, these two bounces do. Those are two huge bounces. And then see as it tries to break back up through it, it kind of stalls right on the area. We get that indecision candle there, and it continues to move up through. So, you know, that's another good sign that this is a support resistance area. There's in fact support resistance grouped in this area. Buyers and sellers grouped in this area, sorry. So let's confirm this one too. Just throw up our lines around it. Okay. All right, and let's just confirm this last one down here. We'll just do this this final one down here. Now, pretty strong bounce there, but we've already seen that one. Bounce there, we've already seen that. A possible bounce there, not exactly from it, so we won't even look at that one. Okay, here. Price broke down, tried to come back up through it, kind of struggled for a bit, came back down, broke straight through. Yeah, not overly convincing, but you could see some support resistance there, but yeah, that's not enough. We need to go back further. I didn't change the color of this line, but it's the last one, so it's easy to keep track of it. We know this one, so we don't have to bother changing the color. We got some pretty convincing bounces here. I mean, bam, right off it. Again, right off it. Struggled along here, came up. As price tried to break through here, it kind of struggled right on top of this area before breaking up. Yeah, when price struggles along support resistance, that's also a good sign, because you know, it just tells us that buyers have moved up into this area and the sellers are giving them trouble. They're trying to push price down, so price struggles along the support resistance for a while. Here it kind of broke straight through it, sort of. That's not too convincing. See, price formed along here. Yeah. This one doesn't seem as strong as the others, to be honest. See how far we have to drag back before we see this again. Alright, it's a little more convincing in the past. Bounce there, broke up through it, bounce back down, bounce, bounce. Yeah. This one's not as strong, but yeah, another bounce there. It's enough for me to place this one too. And the recent data is the most important, as I said. Recent data is always the most important. And the recent data has a pretty convincing bounce and struggled through here. So again, enough for me to place it. So, and that's that done. We've got some support resistance on our GBP/USD daily, GBP/USD 8-hour chart, but these can be used on the daily chart. It's just fine to switch over to the daily chart and use these same areas. There's in fact reversals that I've traded from these areas recently. This one here, I traded this one last week. Bullish preceding trend, indecision formed on the resistance area. Traded a reversal there, short reversal, made 85 pips I think on that one. So you can see these areas have been used recently to take real trades. So we could switch to the 4-hour, and they're valid on the 4-hour. So just because I placed them on the 8-hour, like I said, just for everyone else who's joined a little late, just because I've placed them on the 8-hour doesn't mean they're not valid on the 4-hour or the daily. They're just as valid on either time frame. I just find it a little easier to place it on the 8-hour personally. So yeah, that's how you play support resistance. But we're going to look at some other pairs. I don't want to just do GBP USD. We're going to do AUD USD. Throw some up on AUD USD now. Yeah, let's zoom out again. I like to zoom out just so we can see a little more data. It's easier to work with a chart that's slightly zoomed out, so we can see a little more data, a little more of the bounces that we're looking for. So, starting with recent data. First one is going to go there. Now it's quite obvious why it's going there. Bounce there. There's not many other bounces there. But that's a pretty big bounce, so I'm going to place it here. It might be that this is just a random bounce. It's not actually a bounce from support resistance. And we might need to remove this line as we drag back. We might not be able to confirm that this is actual support resistance. But I'm going to place it up here for now, and we're going to see how it goes. Next one could go here. It's hard to say because the recent bounces there. Yeah, I'm going to throw it up here. Now I'm throwing it up here because we got a pretty strong bounce here. Price struggled through there. But again, going back further, it's not that convincing. But that's why we confirm the lines. That's why we place them and then we drag charts back to confirm them. We just want to be sure that price is actually bouncing from there. Guys, let's keep questions till the end again. We'll keep questions till the end, and I'll just answer all questions at the end. I'm going to throw another one up here, just because it kind of stands out up here. We could see several bounces up here. Bounce there. Also struggled through here, so we'll throw that one up. Okay. Right, let's throw one up around about here. Now I'm throwing this one up here because we got a pretty significant bounce there. That alone isn't enough, but we can see as price push through here, tried to get back up real quick there, and tried to get back up here. So I'm going to throw one up here. Now the reason I picked AUD USD is because it's a little harder to place it on here right now because of how prices move through this area. It's not as obvious as GBP USD. So I wanted to pick something that's slightly more challenging, and that's why I picked AUD USD. So you could already see that this is slightly harder to place our support resistance here. We might need some little tweaking with AUD USD just to get them all perfect. I'm going to throw one here. Throwing it here because there's a bounce there when I tried to get back through, struggled through here. Price broke through here, tried to get back through. But we don't really have much data to go on here, so we're going to have to drag charts back and confirm that this is a support resistance area. So this is a good start so far. Now we just have to drag the charts back. So we'll start with the top one, obviously. And let's drag back. And so we got those recent bounces there. Forget about these lines. They're like lines that I had placed ages ago on AUD USD before it dropped down. So yeah, just ignore those. Those are my old support resistance on AUD USD. Okay, we see a few bounces here. Yeah, bounce there. Kind of a bounce there. A bounce there. Not too convincing, but let's drag back a little further, see what we see. There's some pretty convincing bounces there. Check those out. And wait, I'm going to zoom in again. Just a little easier to zoom in when you're trying to confirm them. You just see everything a little closer. We can see price struggled through here, struggled through there, kind of a bounce here, another bounce there. Yeah, it's looking pretty decent. We can see some bounces here, some pretty strong bounces there actually. See as price tried to get back down through here. So bounce there, bounce there. As price came up, it kind of stalled here, bounced away slightly before breaking through. Yeah, this one's not that amazing. It doesn't stand out that much. I mean, there are a few pretty decent bounces from it, but it's not stunning by any means. But yeah, there's enough bounces here to confirm that this is support resistance. So I'm going to go ahead and just confirm this one. Okay, next one below that. This one, you know what I'm thinking? We can move this one a little bit further down. Now, if we move this one a little bit further down, it better accounts for these bounces here, and then this bounce here. So if this one's too high, where I originally placed it here, then it doesn't really explain the bounces that are pretty far below there. So, you know, sometimes they need a little bit of tweaking, just a tiny little bit of tweaking, just to confirm that they're support resistance areas. So I'm going to tweak this one, and pull it down to about here. And we're going to drag charts back and see what it looks like. So I'm just going to change the color of this one so it's easy to keep track of it. We see some price struggled through here. See some wick bounces here. Yeah, that's not too convincing there. All right, we see that as price tried to break through here, it bounced away, and those are the old ones I had. So we'll just keep dragging price back until we get back to. Sometimes if you have to drag back a lot, it's easier to just switch to the daily chart and just use the daily chart because it's easier to drag back a daily chart. So I'm on the daily chart now. And you can see as I drag back to here, price hasn't been down here for a long time, so this is October 2010. As I drag back down to here, we see a pretty convincing bounce there, and we see a bounce here. And these bounces will look even stronger on the 8-hour chart, but they are very convincing on the daily chart also. So yeah, just look at how strong this bounce is. Really, it's nice, strong, bullish preceding trend, hits here, and then reverses significantly. And then as it tries to break up through, it hits here and it reverses before coming back through. So those are pretty convincing bounces there. Yes, this webinar is being recorded. That's the most common question I'm asked in webinars. And I write it all over the website. The webinar is being recorded, guys. Okay. So bounce through here. Price tries to break up, struggles there. Price tries to break up, struggles, comes through, not very convincing, but it's clear that price was struggling there. Yeah, there's kind of a bounce here. And another bounce there. This would probably look nicer on the 8-hour chart too. Pretty strong bounce there. And this is getting to be enough for me to confirm that there's a support resistance here. Yeah, kind of a bounce there. Pretty strong bounce here. Pretty strong bounce with this one. Wick bounce there. Bounce here. Price broke up through here. Struggled. Came back up. So yeah, that's enough for me to confirm this is support resistance here. Just gonna switch back to the 8-hour chart. So you could do that if you want. I mean, you could switch to the daily chart. If you don't have much data on the 8-hour, you switch to the daily. It's easier to go back. I do that quite often. And if you want to see the bounces with a little more precision, you can switch to the 4-hour. And the 4-hour will give you, like, you can see the bounces a lot clearer. You can see more price action information with the smaller time frames. So you could just switch between them as you're placing them if you want to. So let's go back to 8-hour and go back to the start. Just confirm this one. So you can see this process is quite easy, and it's taking me a while right now. It's because I'm explaining each one of these lines to you guys. But if you're doing this yourself, I mean, it's just going to be an easy process. I mean, you're just going to, once you learn how to do it, it takes just a few minutes to place support resistance on each chart. So it doesn't take as long as does when I'm doing it here. Ooh. Yeah, around about here. Okay. Well, let's check out this one. Okay. Drag our chart back. We can see a bounce there immediately. I'm going to switch to daily again just so it's easier to drag back. We can see as price broke up through here, struggled, came up, bounced from there. You see price bounce pretty convincingly from there. Wick bounce here. It's getting a little tough on the daily. Just switch to the 8-hour. We'll get a little more price action information on the 8-hour. See price bounce there, on its way down, bounce there before breaking through. Yeah, price bounced here. So this just confirms that there are buyers and sellers in this area. We see several bounces from this area. Pretty strong bounce there. Price tried to break through, bounce pretty strong there. Yeah, wick bounce kind of. This one's not as strong as the previous ones. But we can clearly see that when price comes through here, it kind of like bounces from it. So bounce there, body bounce there. But pretty strong body bounce there, wick bounce there. So yeah, I'm going to confirm this one. Actually, we're running short on time, and I want to switch to EuroCAD, so I'm not going to complete the ones on AUD USD, just because we're 45 minutes into this webinar, and we still need to do questions, which usually takes 20 minutes in itself, and we haven't looked at EuroCAD. So I'm not going to finish off this AUD one. I just want to quickly look at EuroCAD, because I want to do a pair that you know, I don't want to do it just on the big pairs. I don't want to just show you guys the big pairs that everyone trades. I want to show you guys some support resistance on the smaller pairs that aren't traded as often. So I'm just going to quickly throw some up here. Let's zoom out real quick. Throw one up here. The red. Okay, that's better. Next one. The one I threw up here is because of that pretty big bounce there. Next one, around about here. And the reason I'm throwing it there is because of a bounce there, bounce there, bounce there. Next one, I'm going to throw here. Now, the reason I'm putting it there is because we got two pretty strong bounces. A bounce there, very strong one. And as price breaks through, it tries to get back up and it bounces from here twice. And there's also a bounce there. So that tells me that there's possible support resistance here. And let's do, yeah, two more. I'm going to throw one here. And this one here. Can accounts for these wick bounces here. As price tried to break up, you can see it struggled here, got bounce there, some wick bounces here. Like I said, we have to drag back and confirm these. And let's throw up just one more here. That accounts for these bounces here. These bounces through here, and this big bounce here, another bounce there. As price broke through, tried to get back up through there. So yeah, this is just I've just thrown some up real quickly on here, but you could see it's the same process on any pair. It's not only the big pairs. EuroCAD, you could just pick any pair and throw support resistance up, because there's always support resistance on a chart. Not even just on Forex, on any chart, there's going to be support resistance. There's going to be areas in which buyers and sellers are grouped to where they want to buy, they want to sell. So you could just throw them up on any chart. I'm also going to link you to a video after this in which I place support resistance on a few more charts, just because I had a feeling we wouldn't get through many charts in this webinar. But there's going to be another video for you guys that I'm going to send to you via email that's going to show you support resistance on a few different pairs, because I really think it's absolutely important for you guys to learn how to place support resistance and use them in conjunction with indecision candles. Now we're running short on time, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to answer questions now, and tomorrow we're going to take a closer look at all the support resistance areas we placed today, and we're going to take a look at how you use these support resistance areas with indecision candles, and how to confirm reversals there, and how to actually enter those reversals and make some profits. So yeah, we'll look at these support resistance areas further tomorrow, and we'll see how to actually take trades from them. But for now, I'm going to open up to questions real quick. We got about 10-12 minutes left. Adian from the UK, how many bounces do you look for to confirm an area of support resistance? More than 3? Yeah, generally more than 3. I want to see quite a few bounces. There's no exact number, but let's say 5 or more bounces. You saw with all the ones I dragged back, there were several bounces over the last year. So I look for at least 5. The more convincing the bounce, the better the area. Henry, that stuff is discussed tomorrow. How do you know how many pips to target if you're going against the trend? We're going to be covering entering trades tomorrow. This is just support resistance for now. That's why we're splitting these webinars over 3 days, because there's a lot of stuff to cover, and I just can't cover it all in one webinar. You can see that support resistance alone, if I had to explain it in full, would take more than an hour. So we're gonna discuss that kind of stuff tomorrow. Peter, that's a good question. Are you looking for a typical pip distance between support resistance areas? Yeah, generally speaking, most support resistance areas are pretty evenly spaced. You are going to get some points in your chart where support resistance is closer together, like we see in this GBP/USD chart. They're pretty close, but for the most part, they are pretty evenly spaced. But it just depends on the chart. You're not going to have even spacing on. You're not going to have the same spacing for support resistance on GBP/USD than you have on EUR/JPY, because EUR/JPY moves a whole lot more than GBP/USD. So if you have support resistance every 50 pips, let's say, on USD CAD, because USD CAD in particular moves pretty slow. If you have support resistance every 50 pips on USD CAD, and then you have it every 50 pips on EUR/JPY, the ones on EUR/JPY are going to be so close together it's untradeable. So it depends on the chart. The GBP/USD ones tend to be pretty evenly spaced, about 100 to 140 pips. You can see this one is 140, this one is 120. Now this one is pretty close. It's only 80. They're not always evenly spaced, but for the most part they're evenly spaced. These next two are just 100 pips apart. So 100 to 130 on GBP/USD is about right, usually spaced about that much apart. Yeah, as is from Morocco. Once we find out support resistance, we place 2 lines 10 pips to either side to make a zone. That is correct. Throw up 2 lines to either side just to mark it as a zone on your chart. I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. Jed from London. Do you trade anything else other than reversals? No, I look for a very specific setup. I look only for reversals. I concentrate on one thing. I concentrate on one thing with my trading, and I've learned to do that thing perfectly. And I think that's how everyone should trade. Instead of concentrating on 100 different types of trades, just specifically look for one setup. Learn that setup as well as you possibly can, and just become a master of that setup, and then you just trade that setup. Um, you know, if I really wanted to, I could get like 10 trades per week, 10 reversal trades per week with my strategy. And why would I need more trades than that? So yeah, I only trade reversals, but only trading reversals is not a bad thing. It's a good thing. So next question. Oh, that's a good question, Jeremy. Regarding line migration, so when the support resistance areas move, how often do you check and update your support resistance areas? Generally, every 2 or 3 months, I'll just have a quick look. Generally on the Sunday before market opens, or on the Saturday, I'll just take a quick look and I'll just drag charts back a bit and just confirm that the price is still bouncing from the areas. If a line has moved, if there's been a little bit of migration on the lines, you're going to notice that instead of bouncing like from the area, it's going to start bouncing slightly above, and then you just know that you have to move it up about 10 or 20 pips. Or it could also start bouncing slightly below. There's nothing to say it's going to bounce slightly above. Could start bouncing slightly below, and then you're going to know that you have to move it up. But just because it bounces slightly below twice, that's not enough. You have to drag your chart back, and if you notice, it's been doing that every now and then. Every time price comes up into this area, then you know that you have to move it down slightly. But I check every 2-3 months, not that often. Why don't you place a? Oh wait, Kevin. Kevin from the UK. Yeah, I do that. So Kevin's asked, when you look back to confirm a support resistance area, if you don't get enough bounces, confirmation from it, do you ignore it or scrap it? Definitely. If I place an area of support resistance on my chart and then I drag the charts back, it doesn't happen too often, but it does happen, especially if you're placing a lot of lines on your chart. And then I look back and price just constantly flies through it, and it never really pays much attention to the support resistance area. I don't place it. Recent data is always most important, but there also has to be some past data to just back up that it is an actual support resistance area. Because sometimes you're going to get bounces, recent bounces, because of news. So for example, price might drop down to here, well, slightly drop down to here. It comes down to here, and then NFP is released right at this point, and price just turns around real fast. Then you place a support resistance area there, and you drag it back, and it's not actually an area of support resistance. It's only had a major reversal there because of the NFP report. So that's going to happen sometimes. So that's why it's important to drag back and confirm that it is an actual area of support resistance. Sorry guys, I can't see what everyone's typing because I'm back. I've dragged the chat back up to answer the questions because there's so many questions right now. I'm not going to have time to get through them all. Sorry about that, but I'm going to get through as many as I can. Jerry is asking if I usually look for a wick bounce or a body bounce. I tend to look for body bounces from support resistance areas. The body bounces are usually more significant. So, for example, those are body bounces there. Those are wick bounces. I tend to look for the body bounces. I think they're usually a stronger sign that the support resistance in that area. Do you use average daily range to determine the distance between support resistance areas? No. I've already answered most of these questions. Okay. I am gonna drag back up a bit because it's really hard to answer questions. So many questions are coming in and it keeps pushing the chat up. So it's hard to keep track of what's being asked. Breeze, do you consider support resistance? Do I consider the support and resistance I draw more important than support and resistance that forms around the numbers? Those are psychological levels. Yeah, I consider the support resistance I draw more important than psychological levels. Psychological levels, for those of you who don't know, are rounded numbers. So, for example, drag low to find a very significant example. A rounded number would be on this chart the 1.5000. That's a big rounded number, and buyers and sellers tend to group around those big rounded numbers. But I consider the ones I draw more important because they usually have a pretty long track record, and I'll usually find that the ones I draw form around those big rounded numbers anyway, so they usually coincide with those big rounded numbers, psychological levels. People are asking how I trade. That is going to be discussed tomorrow. It's a 3-day challenge, guys, and I'm going to be discussing the actual trading part. The final part, the most important part, is discussed on the last day. But this is just the first 2 days are just the basics, just so you understand the basics. I understand a lot of you guys know this stuff already, and it might be a little boring for you guys. But we need to get the basics out of the way first. So please, no more questions on how I actually take these trades, because that's going to be discussed tomorrow. That's when it all comes together tomorrow. I'm not going to answer that stuff today because that's not what today is about. Today is about the basics. Tomorrow is about putting all the basics together to actually take trades. Do you consider pivots? I said that at the start, so you're going to have to watch a recording. Don't really look at pivots. My support resistance, in my opinion, is a lot more important than pivots. Pivots are too static because they're based on a formula. I base my support and resistance on where buyers and sellers are actually entering the market, as opposed to where the mathematical formula tells me buyers and sellers might enter the market. Okay, guys, I'm going to call an end to this webinar. I'm going to be in the room for a little bit longer, just answering some of the more general questions that are being asked. So I'm going to call an end to this webinar. I'm going to stop